Okay, year two. I've come into Mr. Vine's classroom today for a bit of a change of scenery. Okay, so we're carrying on with Horrid Henry in the haunted house. So let's see where we get up to today. Horrid Henry spent a busy day. He went ice skating. He went to the cinema. He played football. After supper, Henry went straight to bed. It's been a lovely day, he said, but I'm tired. Good night, Aunt Ruby. Good night, Steve. Good night, Henry, said Ruby. Steve ignored him. But Henry did not go to his bedroom. Instead, he snuck into Steve's. He wriggled under Steve's bed and lay there waiting. Soon Steve came into the room. Henry resisted the urge to reach out and seize Steve's skinny leg. He had something much scarier in mind. He heard Steve putting on his blue bunny pajamas and jumping into bed. Henry waited until the room was dark. Steve lay above him, humming to himself. Dooby 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 doo, sang Steve. Slowly, Henry reached up and ever so slightly poked the mattress. Silence. Dooby 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 doo, sang Steve, still quietly. Henry reached up and poked the mattress again. Steve sat up. Then he lay back. Henry poked the mattress again, ever so slightly. Must be my imagination, said Steve. Henry allowed several moments to pass, and then he twitched the duvet. Mummy, whimpered Steve. Jab! Henry gave the mattress a definite poke. Ah! Screamed Steve. He leapt up and ran out of the room. Mummy, help! There's monsters! Henry scrambled out of the room and ran silently upstairs to his attic bedroom. Quickly as he could, he put on his pyjamas, then clattered noisily back down the stairs to Steve's. Aunt Ruby was on her hands and knees peering under the bed. Steve was shivering and quivering in the corner. There's nothing here, Steve, she said. What's wrong? Said Henry. Nothing, said Steve. You're not scared of the dark, are you? Said Henry. Back to bed, boys, said Aunt Ruby, and she left the room. Ah, Mummy, help! Monsters! Said Henry, sticking out his tongue. Mum, wailed Steve, Henry's being horrid. Go to bed, both of you, said Ruby. Watch out for monsters, said Henry. Steve did not move from his corner. Do you want to swap rooms tonight? Said Henry. Steve did not wait to be asked twice. Oh, yes, said Steve. Go on up, said Henry. Sweet dreams. Steve dashed out of his bedroom as fast as he could. Hee, thought Horrid Henry, pulling Steve's toys down from the shelves. Now what would he play with first? Oh, yes, he'd left a few spooky sounds of his own under the attic bed, just in case. Terrible. He's a bit naughty, isn't he? One of the words we've been looking at today is mischievous. So Horrid Henry is definitely mischievous. Okay? I think we've got time to start the next one. It's called Moody Margaret Moves In. Mum was on the phone. Of course we'll be delighted to have Margaret, she said. It will be no trouble at all. Henry stopped breaking the tails off Peter's plastic horses. What? He said. Shh, Henry said, Mum. No, she added. Henry is delighted too. See you Friday. What's going on? Said Henry. Margaret is coming to stay while her parents go on holiday, said Mum. Henry was speechless with horror. She's going to stay here? Yes, said Mum. How long? Said Henry. 2 weeks, said Mum. Horrid Henry could not stand Moody Margaret for more than 2 minutes. 2 weeks, he said. I'll run away. I'll lock her out of the house. I'll pull her hair out. Don't be horrid, Henry, said Mum. Margaret's a lovely girl, and I'm sure we'll have fun. No, we won't, said Henry. Not with that moody old grouch. I'll have fun, said Perfect Peter. I love having guests. She's not sleeping in my room, said Horrid Henry. She can sleep in the cellar. No, said Mum. You'll move into Peter's room and let Margaret have your bed. Horrid Henry opened his mouth to scream, but only a little sound came out. He was so appalled he could only make a small sound. Give up my room, he choked. To Margaret. Margaret spying on his treasures, sleeping in his bed, playing with his toys, while he had to share a room with Peter. No, howled Henry. He fell on the floor and screamed no. I don't mind giving up my bed for a guest, said Perfect Peter. It's the polite thing to do. Guests come first. Henry stopped howling just long enough to kick Peter. Ow! Screamed Peter. He burst into tears. Mum! Henry, yelled Mum, you horrid boy. Say sorry to Peter. She's not coming, said Henry, and that is final. Go to your room, yelled Mum. Moody Margaret arrived at Henry's house with her parents, 4 suitcases, 7 boxes of toys, 2 pillows, and a trumpet. Margaret won't be any trouble, said her mum. She's always polite, eats everything, and never complains. Isn't that right, precious? Oh, yes, said Margaret. Margaret's no fusspot, said her dad. She's good as gold, aren't you, precious? Yes, said Margaret. Have a lovely holiday, said Mum. We will, said Margaret's parents, and the door slammed behind them. Moody Margaret marched into the sitting room and swept a finger across the mantelpiece. It's not very clean, is it? She said. You'll never find so much dust at my house. Oh, said Dad. A little dust never hurt anyone, said Mum. I'm allergic, said Margaret. One whiff of dust and I start to... Atch! She sneezed. We'll clean up right away, said Mum. Dad mopped, Mum swept, Peter dusted, Henry hoovered, and Margaret directed. Henry, you've missed a big dust ball right there, said Margaret, pointing under the sofa. Horrid Henry hoovered as far away from the dust as possible. No, not there. Here, said Margaret. Henry aimed the hoover at Margaret. He was a fire-breathing dragon burning his prey. Help! Shrieked Margaret. Henry, said Dad. Don't be horrid, said Mum. I think Henry should be punished, said Margaret. I think he should be locked in his bedroom for 3 weeks. I don't have a bedroom to be locked up in because you're in it, said Henry. He glared at Margaret, and Margaret glared back. I'm the guest, Henry, so you'd better be polite, hissed Margaret. Of course he'll be polite, said Mum. Don't worry, Margaret. Any trouble, you come straight to me. Thank you, said Moody Margaret, smiling. I will. I'm hungry, she added. Why isn't supper ready? It will be soon, said Dad. But I always eat at 6 o'clock, said Margaret. I want to eat now. All right, said Dad. Horrid Henry and Moody Margaret dashed for the seat facing the garden. Margaret got there first. Henry shoved her off. Then Margaret shoved him off. Thud! Henry landed on the floor. Ouch! Said Henry. Let the guest have the chair, said Dad. But that's my chair, said Henry. That's where I always sit. Have my chair, Margaret, said Perfect Peter. I don't mind. I want to sit here, said Moody Margaret. I'm the guest, so I decide. Horrid Henry dragged himself around the table and sat next to Peter. Ouch, said Margaret. Henry kicked me. No, I didn't, said Henry. Stop it, Henry, said Mum. That's no way to treat a guest. Henry stuck out his tongue at Moody Margaret, and she stuck her tongue out even further at him, and then stomped on his foot. Ouch! Shrieked Henry. Margaret kicked me. Moody Margaret gasped. Oh, I'm ever so sorry, Henry. It was an accident. Silly me. I really didn't mean to. Honestly, I didn't. Dad brought the food to the table. What's that? Said Margaret. Baked beans, corn on the cob, and chicken, said Dad. I don't like baked beans, said Margaret, and I like my corn off the cob. Mum scraped the corn off the cob. No, put the corn on a separate plate, said Margaret. I don't like vegetables touching my meat. Dad got out the pirate plate, the duck plate, and the Happy Birthday Peter plate. I want the pirate plate, said Margaret, snatching it. I want the pirate plate, said Henry, snatching it back. I don't mind which plate I get, said Perfect Peter. A plate is a plate. No, it isn't, said Henry. I'm the guest, shouted Margaret. I get to choose. Oh, give her the pirate plate, Henry, said Dad. It's not fair, said Henry, glaring at his plate. I've got the one with little ducks on it. She is the guest, said Mum. So, said Henry, Wasn't there an ancient Greek who stretched all his guests on an iron bed if they were too short, or lopped off their heads and feet if they were too long? That guy knew how to deal with guests. Yuck, said Margaret, spitting out a mouthful of chicken. You've put salt in it. Only a little, said Dad. I never eat salt, said Moody Margaret. It's not good for me, and I always have peas at my house. We'll get some tomorrow, said Mum. Peter lay asleep in the top bunk. Horrid Henry sat listening by the door. He'd scattered crumbs all over Margaret's bed. He couldn't wait to hear her scream. But there wasn't a sound coming from Henry's room, where Margaret lay. Henry could not understand it. Sadly, he climbed into the bottom bunk, and then he screamed. His bed was filled with jam, crumbs, and something squishy-squashy and horrible. Go to sleep, Henry, shouted Dad. That Margaret. He'd booby-trapped the room, cut up her doll's clothes. Oh, yes, he would fix Moody Margaret. Mum and Dad sat in the sitting room watching TV. Moody Margaret appeared on the stairs. Can't sleep with that noise, she said. Mum and Dad looked at each other. We were watching very quietly, dear, said Mum. But I can't sleep if there's any noise in the house, said Margaret. I have very sensitive ears. Mum turned off the TV and picked up her knitting needles. Click, click, click. Margaret reappeared. I can't sleep with that clicking noise, she said. All right, said Mum. And it's cold in my bedroom, said Moody Margaret. Mum turned up the heat. Margaret reappeared. Now it's too hot, said Moody Margaret. Dad turned down the heat. My room smells funny. My bed is too hard. My room is too stuffy. My room is too light. Good night, Margaret, said Mum. How many more days is she staying? Said Dad. Mum looked at the calendar. Only 13, said Mum. Dad hid his face in his hands. I don't know if I can live that long, said Dad. Not sure I'd like Moody Margaret living at my house either. Speak to you soon. Bye.